Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischel. This is going to be episode 148 of my poker vlog. For this one, I play a 2-5 session at the One Eye Jacks Club, Sarasota, Florida. Before I get in the hands, one quick reminder. If you can't ever play with me live, I'm constantly online at my Club GG Club. They have a free roll tournament every Thursday and Sunday, free to enter. Good tournament practice, especially leading up to the World Series. Also offering a 10% first-time deposit bonus. A link to that will be in the description below. Now let's roll the tape. First hand of note. We start this day at the 1-3 table. We are greeted with pocket aces under the gun. I raise it up to $15 and everyone fold. What a dumb start.
That's sad. It's totally sad.
But at least we didn't get them cracked. That was the only hand as the 2-5 game was called right after that, so we buy into that game for $1,000 before I'm in middle position with King, Queen offsuit, King of Spades, Queen of Clubs, and I raise to $20. The big blind is the only caller, so we end up going heads up to a flop of Ace 10 3 all spades. Pretty good board for me. Nut flush draw, got a gut shot, so we're gonna down bet this one. A down bet here can get a lot of my opponents nothing hands to fold, like 5-6 of hearts, maybe pocket sevens with no spade. Plenty of hands that would fold to a small size bet here, so I bet $15. But my opponent makes the call. When the turn is the 6 of diamonds and my opponent checks to me, I think I'd rather just like to realize my equity here. I have a bunch of hands, and if my opponent has an ace, he's not really folding. If he somehow has a made flush, he might even raise here, and I won't get to realize any of my equities. So I'm going to check this one back, and the river is the 5 of clubs. Kind of a dumb card. I had a whole bunch of equity, a lot of draws. They all brick, and even worse, my opponent leads for $35. I actually think it's fine to turn this hand into a bluff some of the time, but we just sat down. It's early. No need to get too out of line just yet, so I'm just going to let this one go and move on to the next one. Next hand of note. Under the gun raises to $20. I'm in the +1 spot. I raise to $55 with pocket jacks. I mean, under the gun and then under gun +1 3-bet are some very narrow ranges, so I don't think my 3-bet even needs to be too big. I'm pretty much repping aces, kings, queens, I guess jacks, and ace king. And $55 is enough to thin the field. Only the under the gun player calls, but he is an under the gun opener and 3-bet caller, so he's got a pretty tight range as well. We end up going heads up to a flop of 8-5 deuce rainbow. It's hard to keep an overpair with jacks, so we're going to keep betting here. You know, we're repping all the overpairs. We have one. My opponent might peel with like ace king, ace queen. Maybe pocket 10s is in there some of the time, pocket 9s. So I continue for $60, a little over half pot. My opponent is not deterred. He makes the call. The turn is the bink jack of clubs. If I was ever behind, I literally just turn the nuts. At this point, I'm like just praying my opponent can have pocket queens here sometimes and just be somewhat nervous that I have kings or aces. Additionally, he could have maybe 6-7, 3-4, ace-3, ace-4, maybe some gut shots of some straight draws that'll pay off a bet, but I want to bet very small here. I have most of the board locked up. Definitely don't want to scare my opponent away. I want to get as much money in here now while I have the nuts. So I settle on a sizing of $75. I think all draws will pay this off. Overpairs may raise this. Maybe if my opponent had like pocket 9s, he'll still stick around. So $75 does the trick. My opponent continues, and the river is the 5 of spades. So we fill up. That's fantastic. If my opponent for some reason had 5-6, 8-5, 5 deuce, very unlikely, but he fills up. We're getting it all if he has one of those hands. But when my opponent checks to me, I definitely need to bet here. I want to go a sizing that all middling pocket pairs will call. If my opponent somehow flopped another set, like pocket 8s, pocket deuces, we're getting it all in. Getting it all in against queens. Only one combination of pocket 5s to worry about, but that's basically zero, because if he has quads, I mean, good for him. I bet $175. My opponent does not snap fold. In fact, he has a look on his face like he doesn't want to fold or call. And I'm getting extremely excited. He eventually announces all in.
No way!
I snap call before he even moves one chip forward, throw my cards on the table, and he just says, "You're good."
Right!
And puts them down. The all-in was for a total of $650. My opponent has about the exact same amount, so definitely an amazing spot with pocket jacks. Definitely awesome to get the absolute maximum. And then, as the chips are being counted out, my opponent eventually shows that he had pocket deuces, so we turn a 2-outer. Extremely thankful for that. We run really good in Sarasota with pocket jacks. I haven't even got my chips situated yet. It's the very next shuffle. I'm under the gun. I look down at pocket kings. We are running hot today. I raise it to $20 from the under the gun spot, +1, and the cutoff decide to call. So we end up going 3 ways to a flop of 9, 7, deuce, 2 hearts. Pretty safe board for me. A lot easier to keep an overpair with kings than it is with pocket jacks, although kings are seemingly an ace magnet. Either way, with the king of hearts, we're not too worried about any flush draws out there, so we can bet somewhat small here, just build value, get paid by random 9s, 10, 8, a 7, middling pairs. We bet $30, and this does not thin the field in the slightest. Both players decide to call, so we're out of position. We gotta tread a little bit lightly, hoping for a safe turn card. Nope, the king magnets never miss. The turn is the ace of spades.
No.
Brings second spade on board, and now it's on me. I think either of these opponents could have ace-x of hearts very easily. So this is going to be a check, probably check, call, turn, reevaluate river spot. Can't see myself betting here all too often. Now, I myself could have some random ace-x, just not even of hearts, just continuation bet with like ace-queen, turn an ace, and then start value betting. But with kings, I think I have enough showdown value to try to pot control a little bit. So I decide to check, and this one checks all the way through. When the river is the 6 of diamonds, 10-8 completes, but besides that, kind of a brick, maybe 7-6 some of the time. Now, as I'm first to act, I think I can go for some thin value here. I think one of these opponents could definitely have a 9 here pretty easily. The other one could have a flush draw, and I'm still ahead of both of those hands. I don't really expect either opponent to not bet if they had an ace with 2 obvious flush draws out there. I do block both flush draws, which is nice. I think that adds a little bit of value to my hand. Makes it a little bit more likely my opponents have a 9 or a random pair. So I bet small here, going for thin value, really just targeting a 9. I bet $45 with pocket kings on an ace-high board. The +1 calls. I announce pocket kings, and he says kings? Yeah, they're good. So we squeak out some really thin value here. Really happy with how this hand played out, and we take down another pot. Following that, with a button straddle, there's 1 limp. I look down at Jack 10 of clubs. I raise to $30 from middle position. The cut off the button and the limper decide to call, so we end up going 4 ways to a flop of queen 4 deuce 2 clubs. So it feels great to flop a flush draw, but there's an overcard to our Jack 10. The small blind just leads out for $50, and I think this is pretty much just a call spot. I think my opponent pretty obviously has a queen here. I can pick up straight draw equity, I can make my flush, I could turn a pair, but we're definitely not folding with the flush draw that we have, so we make the call. We end up being the only caller, and when the turn is the 3 of hearts, my opponent does not care at all. He continues for $100. Very much hoping he would slow up. Would have loved to see a free river or a cheap one at that, but for $100, I don't think I'll be in the right odds to peel with just a flush draw, so I end up letting this one go, giving it to my opponent, and we will move on from there. Following that, with an early position limp, I limp pocket 5s, gonna just set mine them. Really, you should be raising or folding. You should never be limping, especially in loose 2-5 cash games, but it's what I ended up doing on this one. There's one other limp before the cutoff raises to 30. 2 players call. I didn't limp the 5s to fold them.
And you're gonna have to learn how to deal with that.
Definitely going for the call here. Would love to flop a set, get a ton of value from them. But we end up going 4 ways to an ace, jack, 8, 2 diamond board. So definitely whiffed with the 5s, not even a single card under them on the board. So this one's probably just going to be a give up. But thankfully for me, the flop checks all the way through. So we get one more attempt to turn a set. But the turn is the ace of spades. Brings 2 spades, and when it checks to me, I actually think there's some chance that I could have the best hand here. The ace pairing makes it less likely people have them. Also, they probably would have bet it given the obvious diamond flush draw out there, as well as plenty of straight draws. But when I check, the cutoff ruins my dreams as he bets $50. Folds to me. I no set, no bet. I let it go, and the cutoff ends up taking this one down. Probably had an ace, but either way, that one happened. But the stack's looking great. In for $1,000. Have about 17 in front of me. That seems good. before with 4 limps to me, I'm in the big blind with ace deuce offsuit. I think with a lot of your unsuited wheel aces, you should be betting here, but I do think having some of them in range so that you can have some coverage on ace high boards and limped pots is good as well. So I'm just going to check my option here. See a flop of 5-4 deuce 2 diamonds. I do have the ace of diamonds, so I got some backdoor flush potential. Have a pair. I think it's likely people just miss this board completely, playing middling or higher cards, so I'm just going to bet $15 here. At the very least, thin the field, have a wheel draw, have a backdoor flush draw, have a pair. Seems decent. And 2 middle position players called the $15. So we're going 3 ways to a turn card, which is the 7 of diamonds. So we pick up the nut flush draw, but the 7 specifically I think is pretty bad. I think my opponents would peel with 6-7 a lot of the time, so they're never really folding once they get pair plus straight draws. So I decided to check this one, turn my hand into a check call, and on this street, it checks all the way through. The river is the 3 of clubs, so we make a straight, but I don't think my hand is strong enough to bet itself, but I think I can pretty happily check call. When I check, later player checks, and then the hijack ends up betting $25. Now this opponent had been caught bluffing like 2 or 3 times across the session, so he's someone I'm happy just flicking the call. Plenty of times he would bet, get called, just say you're good and mug, and I keep note of those things. But when I call, the later player folds and my opponent shows 6 deuce offsuit. So he does have the higher straight on this one, and we lose a smaller one to that guy. But a final hand of note. An under the gun player raises to $15. There's 3 callers. I'm on the button. I look down at king, queen of hearts. Definitely a pretty standard squeeze play, I would say. I think with all these callers, no one can have a strong hand too often. Even the opener only raised to $15. He's going to have some weak opens some of the time. So we're going to raise this one up. If we got a pure walk with our king, queen of hearts, we'd feel pretty good. We'd make about $65. But when we raise it to $105, the initial under the gun opener calls the 105. And now I just think I'm going to go 4 or 5 ways, $100 a piece to a flop. But all the other players end up folding one by one. So we end up going heads up to a flop of Jack 10-10 1 heart. So flopping open-ended, flopping a backdoor flush draw, I think is pretty decent here. Like, my opponent shouldn't have a 10 all too often. I think my 3-bet to a larger sizing should have narrowed his range to bigger cards. Maybe ace jack's in there some of the time, but we have 2 overs and open-ended. We're going to continue betting here. We're going to rep all the over pairs, all the aces, kings. I suppose ace, king, ace, queen, as well as king, queen would c-bet this board a decent percentage of the time. So this is going to be one of the times where we have one of the bluffs in our 3-bet continue range, and I bet $95. Definitely going to bomb it on any heart, any straightening card, any pair, but it doesn't come to that. My opponent eventually lets it go, and we take down a pretty nice one to end the day with only king high. So for this day, we're into the game for $1,000, out of the game for $1,870. Across 3 hours is a profit of $870, which is $290 per hour, or 58 big blinds an hour. Yeah, it turns out the way to win at poker is just set over set, people. Get the full stacks in, and that's going to lead to a successful day. Happy to book a decent sized win today, and I have another decent sized win coming up. So stay on the lookout for that. And as always, I will see you on the next one.